Maybe you're wondering, is now a good time to buy in Calgary? You've got a steady job, you've got your down payment saved, but recent headlines about the impending real estate crisis here in Canada, plus the rising interest rates and the fear that you're going to buy at the absolute peak and be the laughingstock of your family and friends, it has you rethinking your timing. You've been ready for a while now, and if you don't act at some point, you may never act, and you'll be doomed to renting your entire life, never having a place of your own. And it's not like you can skip out on those high costs because rent has risen 30%, and you still gotta deal with that one neighbor that plays rock band till 2 a.m. I mean, seriously, dude, it is 2022. So you're faced with a choice. You can choose to get educated on what's actually happening in the Canadian real estate market right now, both the risks and the opportunities, so you can avoid the most common pitfalls and make the right decision for you and your family. Or you can continue to rent, telling yourself that you're gonna time the market perfectly eventually, like this guy here in my YouTube comments, or possibly just become a digital nomad and go live that hashtag van life out in BC. Just don't forget they've got winter there too. So depending on how closely you've been following the news or the real estate market or the Bank of Canada interest rate announcements, you might be slightly out of touch with what's happening at this exact moment in time. Let's talk a little bit about how we got here. Just 5-6 months ago, home prices in Canada were all the rage. They were just going up so quickly with double-digit gains in almost all markets. And right here in Calgary, the exact same thing was happening. We were breaking records for sales activity and properties were at all-time highs. But the rising cost of homes wasn't just being borne by people who were buying properties, right? Because landlords were passing along those extra costs on to their renters, basically meaning that if you needed a place to live, you were facing higher costs. And to make matters worse, the Bank of Canada's low interest rate policy that was meant to stimulate the economy and incentivize people like yourself and me to take on debt and buy more things, it was starting to create imbalances in the economy. And this caused the price of everything to go up. Interruptions in supply chains made it so it was difficult to get the goods that people wanted with all that low interest cash. That created so much demand with very little supply, leading to inflation that was running at nearly 40-year highs. To combat all of this, the Bank of Canada decided they needed to raise interest rates aggressively. So at the beginning of the year, it was 0.25% till now 9 months later, 3.25%. So if you're considering buying a home today, you need to know that this will affect you in two distinct ways. One, you'll be buying real estate near its all-time highs. And two, you'll be buying that real estate with mortgages and borrowed money that costs a lot more money than it did at the beginning of the year. These rate changes, they're actually starting to have an impact, just what Bank of Canada wanted, but it's leading to these like fear-mongering headlines. The Canadian housing market could drop at an unprecedented rate next year, or the Bank of Montreal strategist, he's saying an enormous correction could be on the horizon. Based on all of this, you might be thinking that now would be a crazy time to invest into real estate. But before you jump to that conclusion about our market here in Calgary, I want you to consider just 3 separate arguments. So the first thing is that when we hear those negative headlines, they're talking about Toronto and Vancouver, not Calgary. They are the Canadian real estate market. They're so large that what we do over here in Calgary is small in comparison. Those markets have been rising for years now, driven by speculation, driven by low interest rates, driven by high demand, and even things like pre-construction condo sales. People got conditioned to making money, so they kept on upping their bets. Calgary, on the other hand, has not experienced any of that. Apart from a brief run-up over late winter and early spring, our housing market has only went up 30% in the last 15 years. That's only a 2% growth year over year, and that's actually less than wage inflation. So if you are moving from out of province, or you're moving to Canada and you're considering Calgary, the fact that we don't have that same excessive pricing for homes could make this a really great place for you to invest. Don't just take my word for it, because yes, I am a real estate agent, but there are actually articles that have recently been released that the same impacts on Toronto and Vancouver are just not playing out here in Calgary the same way. Secondly, at a time when almost everything everywhere is getting just so expensive, Calgary continues to top the lists of cities that are the most affordable on earth. But we're not just cheap. we're also actually one of the best cities to live in. Just look at this very recent study here that talks about how the cost of living, the housing, the economy, the healthcare, the safety, all those different factors add up to make Calgary one of the best places to raise a family. Now, it doesn't mean that living in Calgary is perfect, because believe me, not everyone loves the weather. Living this close to the Rocky Mountains means that you're going to get some extreme changes in weather. Sometimes it can be sunny and just hours later, you can get a freak rainfall or snowstorm or wind. So it's definitely not for everyone. And geographically, we are even a little bit isolated here in relation to other major cities. But we also live in Canada's sunniest major city, and that's pretty cool. And living close to those Rocky Mountains gives you awesome outdoor lifestyle activities, things like skiing and snowboarding in the winter, or hiking in those beautiful mountains in the summer. And being so close to world-class destinations like Banff and Lake Louise, I mean, they're just an hour or two drive from you. Plus, we have the greatest outdoor show on earth, the Stampede, right? Economically, there is a good reason to come to Calgary as well, because even though we've had the ups and downs of the oil industry over the years, we've still always enjoyed the highest household median income in all of Canada. We've been diversifying our economy, seeing ourselves grow now as a real tech magnet here in Canada. Despite all of the unknowns about 2023, Alberta is set to lead the Canadian economy at over 4% growth. Calgary has still experienced a bit of a softening in prices since its highest point in the spring. Determining whether or not now is the right time for you to buy a home, it's going to depend on whether or not you fall into one of these three categories. Are you an investor? Well, if so, now might not be the perfect time for you to jump into the real estate market, just in case there are a little bit better deals to be had in the middle of next year. But keep in mind two things. One, opportunity cost of sitting on the sideline, and two, there are good deals to be had in almost any market if you know the numbers and you know the community and you know what people want to buy. If you're still looking to buy right now, maybe you're a first-time home buyer just making a lateral move, you need to know that if you're in that next property for 4 to 5 years and you can comfortably afford today's payments, now could be a really great opportunity for you to buy, because remember, even though markets go up and down, you won't realize any of the gains or the losses until you sell. And over time, you will see that real estate always rises. Now, if you're new to Canada, you might be wondering, what should you do? Buying a property now would mean that you would start to build equity, you would start to build your credit, and you would begin to own an asset that has made more average people millionaires than any other commodity. Canadians have accumulated a lot of savings over the last few years, allowing them to better weather any sort of economic storms. Plus, Canada has got a plan to increase immigration to levels of over 450,000 per year, meaning that demand for housing is still going to be high. This downturn, it's built a little bit different, and that's what you got to keep in mind, because the economy is still very strong. Personal incomes are on the rise, there is really low unemployment, and the demand for housing is high while inventories remain low. But all of this begs the question, why not just wait and time the market perfectly? Pick up a home next year at a lower price than you would pay today. Well, if that's your strategy, hey, watch this video right here, because it's not nearly as easy as you might think. And if you're going to try to time the market, there's a few things you're gonna have to do nearly perfect. Oh, is the video not there yet? Well, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell, because we're gonna be uploading that video very, very shortly. Oh, the video is there? Oh yeah, well then just watch it, of course, and then subscribe so you never miss another.